Hi there. You're listening because you want to get to the heart of things, right? Understand stuff quickly, deeply, but without feeling totally overwhelmed.
Exactly. Welcome to the deep dive.
Today we're tackling something really vital, especially if you're a student, maybe burning that midnight oil a bit too often. We're talking about sleep.
Yes, sleep. And we've got this really interesting doctoral dissertation to unpack. It's called Effective Sleep on Vigilance, Short-Term Memory, and Learning in College Students by Aisha Udin.
Okay.
So our mission today, basically, is to see what this research tells us about how sleep affects those, crucial mental tools for learning.
Things like focus, remembering stuff short term.
Right. Vigilance, short-term memory, and actually learning new material.
Huh.
We also want to see, does this research suggest these things link up with your GPA?
And honestly, what jumped out at me right away was seeing how much even a small sleep difference seemed to matter for these basic cognitive skills. It's kind of surprising.
It really is. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's dive in.
So the dissertation kicks off by making a really key point. Sleep isn't just downtime. It's not passive. It's actually a super active period for your brain.
Active? How so?
Oh, especially for locking in memories and learning. The paper mentions something called the trace reactivation hypothesis.
Trace reactivation. Okay, what's that in simple terms?
Think of it like this. You spend your day in lectures, studying, taking in information. Then when you sleep, your brain kind of replays that stuff.
Replays it?
Yeah, it strengthens the connections, the pathways for what you learned. It's almost like your brain's own internal review session.
Huh. So sleep is when my brain hits save on the day's learning. That's a neat way to put it.
That's a great analogy. And then there's the cognitive angle. The study points out that our ability to process information, well, it has limits.
Right. You can only juggle so much at once.
Exactly. And those limits get much tighter when we haven't had enough sleep. We're basically running on fumes.
Makes sense.
And, previous research backs this up. It shows that if you're awake for, say, more than 15 to 17 hours straight.
Which isn't even a full 24 hours.
Right. It can mess with a whole bunch of things. Your alertness, that's vigilance. Your memory, both short and long-term executive functions like planning.
Okay.
And, of course, just your basic ability to learn new information.
Wow. So pulling that all-nighter to cram, it might actually be, actively hurting your ability to perform on the test?
That's the risk, definitely. And it's not just about academics either. Lack of sleep is also linked to, lower mood, feeling down.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. Makes everything harder.
Totally. Just adds another layer of difficulty when you're trying to focus and learn.
Okay, so back to this specific study by Aisha Udin. It focused on college students, right? What was the main question they were trying to answer?
Yeah, undergraduates. They wanted to see how their sleep habits, and they specifically looked at adequate versus inadequate sleep, how that affected vigilance, short-term memory, and learning.
Those core cognitive skills again.
Exactly. And importantly, they also wanted to know if those skills, influenced by sleep, had any link to the student's GPA.
Okay, crucial question. How did they define adequate versus inadequate sleep? Because, 6 hours might feel fine for one person and terrible for another.
That's a really important point.
Mm-hmm.
In this study, they defined adequate sleep as getting 6 or more hours per night.
6 or more. Okay.
And inadequate was less than 6 hours.
Yeah.
Now, it's worth noting this 6-hour cutoff is based on sort of general recommendations.
Right.
But sleep science often suggests that for optimal brain function, especially for college-age adults, you probably need closer to 7, maybe even 9 hours.
Ah, so even the adequate group in this study might have been, just scraping by potentially.
Potentially, yeah. It's a good nuance to remember as we look at the results.
Definitely. So how did they measure these things? Vigilance, memory, learning. What tests did they use?
Okay, so for sleep itself and for GPA, they used self-report questionnaires. Students basically told them about their habits.
Makes sense. What about vigilance? That focus thing?
For that, they used something called the Digit Vigilance Test, or DVT. It basically measures how well you can stay focused and spot target numbers in a stream of digits. Quickness and accuracy.
So a test of staying locked in, basically, not missing details.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Then for short-term memory, holding info in your mind while you work with it, like in a lecture.
Yeah, that's critical.
They use the Working Memory Index, the WMI. It's part of a bigger assessment called the RAMOL-2, Wide Range Assessment of Memory and Learning.
RAMOL-2. Got it. And learning, especially the kind of learning you do in lectures.
Right. For that, they used another part of the RAMOL-2, the Verbal Memory Index, or VMI. This looks at how well you can learn and remember verbal stuff.
Like recalling a story they heard or learning words.
Exactly. Things very similar to retaining lecture information.
Okay, that seems pretty comprehensive. How many students actually took part?
It was a fairly small group, actually,
Well,
20 undergraduate students.
20.
Yeah, and they were all from the metropolitan New York City area. There were also some rules about who could be in it.
Like what?
Ages 18 to 39, non-smokers, and they couldn't have any diagnosed sleep disorders or attention, memory, psychomotor issues, or recent head trauma.
So a specific group. Okay, let's get to the results. This is the interesting part. When they compared the adequate sleepers 6+ hours to the inadequate sleepers, what happened with vigilance? Did less sleep mean less focus on that DVT test?
Well, this was actually one of the surprising findings. For vigilance, measured by the DVT, they didn't find a statistically significant difference between the two groups.
Really? So even with less sleep, their focus on that specific task held up?
In this particular group, on that specific test, yeah, it seemed like they could still marshal their focus for that short task, even if sleep deprived.
Huh. Okay. What about short-term memory then, the WMI?
Now here, the story changes. There was a statistically significant difference.
Okay. In which direction?
The students who got adequate sleep, 6 hours or more, performed significantly better on those short-term memory tasks.
Better than the under 6-hour group.
Yes. The p-value, which is the statistical measure, was 0.006. That's quite low, suggesting it's very unlikely the difference was just random chance.
Wow, 0.006. So skimping on sleep seems to directly hit your ability to, hold information in your head right then and there.
It strongly suggests that, yes, your immediate processing power seems to take a hit.
Okay. And what about learning? That verbal memory index, the VMI, the one that's like lecture recall.
Same pattern there, another statistically significant difference.
Better performance for the adequate sleepers again.
Exactly. The adequate sleep group did significantly better on learning and recalling that verbal information, remembering story details, learning words compared to the group getting less than 6 hours.
And the stats back that up too.
Yep, p-value was 0.009. Also pretty strong evidence. It really highlights how crucial sleep likely is for actually absorbing and remembering verbal info.
Which is, like you said, so much of college, right? Lectures, readings.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we see effects on short-term memory, we see effects on verbal learning. But the big one, did any of this predict GPA? Did sleep or these cognitive scores actually link up to their grades in the study?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Hmm.
In this particular study, with this group of 20 students, when they analyzed the data, they did not find a statistically significant link between these factors: sleep duration, vigilance, short-term memory, learning scores, and the students' reported GPA.
Oh, okay. So even though sleep clearly seems to impact these underlying mental engines for learning,
Right.
they couldn't draw a direct statistical line to GPA in this specific data set. Interesting. How does this all fit with broader ideas about how we learn, the theory behind it?
Well, the dissertation connects it back to cognitivism. Yeah. That's a major learning theory, right?
Right, focuses on the mental processes.
Exactly. Thinking, memory, attention. And these results really line up with that. The core idea of cognitivism is that learning is information processing. So if sleep deprivation impairs those fundamental processes, attention, memory, assent, then it naturally follows that learning itself becomes less effective.
Makes total sense. If the tools are rusty, the job gets harder.
Precisely. And it also reinforces that trace reactivation hypothesis I mentioned earlier.
The brain replaying things during sleep.
Yeah. The fact that they found significant impacts on memory and learning gives more weight to the idea that sleep is when your brain does the crucial work of consolidating information, making those memories stick.
It's not just rest, it's active processing.
Exactly. It's vital for actually cementing what you learned when you were awake.
Okay, so stepping back, what are the big practical takeaways here for, student listening right now? How can they use this?
I think the clearest message is that prioritizing sleep isn't like an optional extra or something you can just sacrifice without consequence.
It's foundational.
It really seems to be foundational for effective learning. And if we connect this to metacognition, thinking about your own thinking.
Like the NSW education source mentioned.
Yeah. Understanding how sleep affects your brain is part of being a smarter learner. It helps you realize why, say, that all-night cram session might actually backfire.
Yeah.
You're not just tired, your brain literally isn't working as well for learning and memory.
So knowing this helps you make better strategic choices about studying.
Definitely. Think about study techniques. The study techniques document mentions active recall, right?
Yeah, pulling information out of your memory, like flashcards or practice tests.
Right. Powerful stuff. But its effectiveness relies on having learned the information reasonably well in the first place. If you get enough sleep, that initial learning and encoding process is likely stronger.
Ah, so good sleep makes the foundation stronger for active recall to work on later.
That's the idea. You're giving active recall better material to work with.
Okay, what about organizing information, like notes?
Well, that document also talks about things like charting or concept mapping. Those rely heavily on your working memory holding pieces of info in mind in your attention, seeing connections.
Which are exactly the things this dissertation found were impacted by lack of sleep.
Exactly. If you're sleep deprived, it's just harder to juggle that information mentally to see the big picture and organize it effectively.
Makes sense. And what about retrieval practice? That idea that testing yourself helps you remember long term.
Yeah, the Roediger and Karpik research mentioned in that OSF review, they found retrieval practice actively recalling info beats, just rereading for long-term memory.
Okay.
Again, adequate sleep supports the initial learning that you then practice retrieving.
Yeah.
And that OSF review actually found retrieval practice helps across lots of subjects and ages. So well-rested students likely get even more out of using that technique.
So sleep basically supercharges your study techniques.
It optimizes them, yeah.
Yeah.
Think about SQ3R2, survey, question, read, recall, recite, review. That recall, recite step, that's pure memory and understanding. If sleep wasn't good, that step is going to be weaker. Even those quick brain breaks people suggest during study sessions,
Yeah.
they're probably more helpful if you're generally well rested. Sleep supports the overall focus you need to benefit from both the studying and the breaks.
Wow. Okay. It really paints sleep as this non-negotiable pillar for learning, but we should probably touch on the limitations of this specific Udden study, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Important to keep those in perspective. Like we said, it was a small sample size, just 20 students.
Right, 20 undergrads in NYC.
Yeah, so we have to be careful about generalizing these exact findings to all college students everywhere, or different age groups, different situations.
And they excluded older students too, you mentioned.
That's right. People who might have different sleep issues like more insomnia. Plus, a key limitation is that it relied on self-reported sleep.
People guessing how much they slept.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And we're not always the best judges of our own sleep duration or quality, so there could be some inaccuracy there.
So definitely valuable insights, but more research is needed.
For sure. Future studies could look at, different sleep durations more precisely, maybe measure sleep quality objectively, not just self-report.
And look at bigger, more diverse groups of students.
Exactly. See if these connections hold up more broadly.
Okay, so to really bring it home for someone listening, what's the absolute core message from digging into this research?
I'd say the main takeaway is that getting sufficient sleep, and maybe even that 6 hours in the study wasn't quite enough, seems to genuinely boost those fundamental cognitive skills.
Vigilance, short-term memory, learning.
Yeah, the very things you need to succeed academically. The link seems pretty strong based on this and other research.
And really, this whole discussion is an encouragement, isn't it, for all of us to maybe just pause and think about our own sleep.
Definitely. How are your sleep habits potentially affecting your focus, your memory, your ability to learn effectively?
It puts the power back in your hands, in a way.
Absolutely. So maybe final thought for you to chew on. Thinking about all this, what's maybe one small concrete change you could try with your sleep routine this week? Just see if it shifts anything for your focus or memory.
Or even just, how does knowing this link between sleep and memory change how you might plan your studying going forward?
Yeah, it's about being intentional, using this knowledge.
Understanding these background processes really does empower you to take more control of your learning. Thanks for exploring this with us.